Welcome to the Jackson Cloud. I'm Jamin.
I'm Casey.
And I'm Olivia.
And we're on the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Why does he keep doing that? I just don't
Well,
understand.
that was my strong bad voice this time. And on this particular episode, we are into our 3rd horseman. So we did an episode on where John is pulling the imagery of horsemen from.
Mm-hmm.
We did an episode on the one on the white horse. We did an episode on the one on the red horse. Now we're doing an episode on the one on the next horse.
Which I'm assuming is black.
It is black.
Yeah.
Third living creature said, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in its hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and wine." So, let's just rehash some themes really quick in case you're tuning in. First off, the 4 horsemen in some ways represent a compass. It's like the entirety of the earth. And the 4 horsemen of the Old Testament were supposed to be like patrol guards, but in the New Testament, it's more like corruption now reigns all across the earth. The first one seemed to represent kind of like oppression from the top, like kings type status. And the second one seemed to represent oppression from the sides, societal-like status. There's violence on both corners. And now we get into societal unrest. When he opened the 3rd seal, the 3rd living creature said, "Come, and behold, a black horse, and a rider with a pair of scales in its hands." So the first one had a bow. The second one had a sword. This one has...
Scales.
which feels way less cool.
Oh, I've been picturing like dragon scales this whole time.
This is why I wanted to clarify.
And I was so confused.
No, it's
I
balancing.
get it. Yeah, because that's how they decided how much things cost.
Yes.
By the way, who's Denarius?
No.
A denarius
No.
was a day's wage for a
I
laborer.
know, but it was more fun to say.
No.
It was more fun.
No.
Yes.
All right, so the first horse for us at the moment, and this is not me saying we're in the apocalypse. This is me just saying like these things work in cycles, right? I've said that in the last episode a lot.
Yep.
Let's look at the cycle in our current situation. The first horse, we have seen political unrest in lots of different ways. Right now, Russia and Ukraine, right? But we've seen it in American politics as well. The second horse, especially like Republican versus Democrat for us, we felt it that way. And now into our third one, we have this inflation, we have gas going up, we have those who are poor are going to struggle through this, and those who are rich are not, and some of them life might get better for the rich. Like you don't know. Sometimes the oppression of the poor just comes at added benefit for the rich. So with that being said, here's what we see with this guy. He comes with a pair of scales in his hands, which, in case you're like Olivia and you're imagining
Not dragon scales.
not dragon scales, be thinking of the right?
Yeah.
Justice is blind.
Yeah.
The sword and the scale.
Well, that's even a good way to think about it, because this part is very much about injustice. So who is that? Is that Athena or what's the Greek?
No, she's the god of wisdom. I don't know if she's the god of justice.
Themis?
Sure, that
Okay.
one.
Well, okay.
But yeah, she is holding the scales. So
Yes. So if you're unfamiliar with it in Greek culture, there was a statue or like a symbol that people were used to where there's a blind woman holding a scale. Well, a blind goddess in this case holding a scale. And the idea was that she was doing like justice without seeing, so
Without being biased.
yeah. So like today, we've seen lots of bias between people of different races where judges will make calls and then you're like, we look at the stats, why are there so many black people in prison and so many white people get away with the same exact things, right? So the idea behind this particular statue was like, justice is important. They're blind to the person. They're blind to all the things that society sees. And you're just feeling where the weight on the scale goes, and you know which side is just and which side is not. That was kind of the representation there. So when you have this one come along, and I don't know if John's specifically trying to play off Themis here, but he would have probably been familiar with the idea of scales playing a part in justice, right? When this third horseman comes along on a black horse, and now it's holding scales in its hands, he might have already had this thought that everyone would have had, like, yeah, and the scales for us represent justice. And you at least see that in the part of what Olivia was just saying, that back then, that was how you sold things. Like, actually, it's still how you sell things, right?
I mean, when you're buying vegetables or fruit, you oftentimes have to weigh out how much you have to know how much you're going to pay. It's the same concept.
And we're not used to it, but, like, what if we found out down the road that the stores that we love actually have offset their scales just a little bit so that you're always paying $3 more than you should be? Like, we would recognize
30 cents more is more like.
I know, but like my one jalapeno $60 inflation is out of control. But like yeah, you would get the sense like this scale is messed up, right?
Yeah.
But they had ways to try to get away with that and rig things. I'm trying to think. Don't you see that in like movies somewhere? Aladdin? Is it in Aladdin?
I don't know. But imagine,
He's one step ahead of the bread line. Yeah, go ahead. Imagine like your magician's tricks, It'd kind of be similar to that, You get your little pebbles to weigh one side down so you can get more money or whatever.
Well, no, normally it would be when you're weighing it, you like put a slight thumb on the scale to like weigh it your way so that your money looks like it weighs more even though it doesn't. That way you can get more for less money.
I'm sure there were all kinds of tricks, including just
The
offsetting.
other popular trick back in the day was to actually like shave off like some of your weights to make them like way different than they're supposed to.
That's what I've been trying to do.
Yeah.
And when was the last time you were? Never mind.
I don't know. I got a YouTube comment about how I'm fat. YouTube comments are fun. Thanks, people. Go on. That was a real second horseman thing to say, by the way. Sorry, continue.
All right, so, but yeah, so there was been a lot of ways where like they would try to cheat you on like how to be able to get more for less.
Which they're definitely doing at this point. So you have political unrest, societal unrest. Now you can't even buy food and live. A quart of wheat for a denarius. A denarius was like the entire day's wages. So you want just a little bit of something so you can go make some bread, and you can't even do that because it costs everything that you had for the day. John's actually going to pay a lot of attention to that element. What am I looking for? Greed, slavery. Later, there's this like crazy passage where John's just going to list off all of these different kinds of spices and where they're from, and you're like, why on earth is this here? Why does John care about and cinnamon, this and it just goes on, and then at the end he's like, and it's all born on the back of slaves. Like John right there. We have a lot of organizations rising up right now to make us aware of the places that we're buying our things from, where our shirts come from, the kind of wages people are making, how we're the oppressors in those situations because we're doing them harm as they're trying to make a living wage and things like that. Like, there are people already living in this scenario. A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. But do not harm the oil and wine. Don't harm the good stuff. Like I'll take from Gordon D. Fee here. The most likely,
because that was lamp oil at the time, right?
well, maybe. Among the many options that interpreters have offered for this unusual moment, most likely would seem to be a historical reflection on the fur created by the Emperor Domitian in 92 CE, where he ordered half of the vineyards in the province of Asia to be cut down so that he could increase the wheat supply for the empire. Fortunately, the good sense of others prevailed so that the vines were spared. That's one thing that he pulls across there, but The trees, producers of olive oil, and the vines, producers of wine, those kinds of things eventually were spared. But like, those things are also probably the things that I'm guessing. I guess I don't have my notes right in front of me. Maybe you can afford, if you can afford that, like you're doing okay.
Yeah, I'm guessing cooking oil, not
Lamp oil.
lamp oil, because cooking oil is what makes your food actually taste good. And your wine is like your drink that's not going to have bacteria or anything in it back in this day. So if you have those things, you're well off. But, you know, if you're paying your day's worth of money for maybe enough wheat to make a loaf of bread, you're never going to get those things.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can pull up.
So what
Yeah.
he's saying is like the stuff that everyone needs, that should go up in price, but the stuff that the rich people like, that should stay the same price.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Here's what. So we saw Gordon D. Fee pulls out like a historical place that John might have been referencing in history. I like what N.T. Wright says. Ordinary commodities is basically what Casey just said. The staple diet of poor people shoot up in price. Luxury items, oil and wine, stay the same, allowing the rich once more to get richer at the expense of the poor.
Yeah.
So,
Which we've seen happen today with items like quinoa. Used to be a staple poor person food in the communities that grew it because it was the only protein they had access to. And then America, and mostly vegans, sorry guys, gonna call you out on this one, realized that it's a great source of protein. So we started importing it at higher prices, making it so the people that depended on it couldn't eat anymore.
yeah, and when we get to
What's
the
quinoa?
yeah, it's pronounced quinoa first off, and just kidding. That's how it's spelled. It weirds me out.
Yeah, the spelling
It's like
versus
quitch,
the pronunciation is really annoying.
Which apparently is pronounced quiche. I always like a good quitch for breakfast, followed by some quinoa for lunch. Don't let Jamie pronounce things. Anyways,
This is why you shouldn't pronounce things you've only read before.
it's true. It's true. But yeah, I think it's a good example. Like those things that already rich people could afford, like still stays the same, and they don't suffer at all. They just can keep getting it.
Yeah.
Possibly another way, it wouldn't fit the oil, but you could almost fit the wine into it as like, well, gonna go drown my sorrows. I can still afford to do that, but I don't. The oil wouldn't match that scenario.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
Yeah, so probably not that perspective. Anyways, with that being said, we are seeing like the downfall of society in the Four Horsemen, right? Oppression from the top, oppression from the sides, social injustice, cheating, and everybody's getting rich while the poor get poorer. These were things that John cared about, and that's because he's a prophet. And a lot of times when we think of prophecy, we think of like, those are people who tell the future. The prophets are the ones who often tell the present. And when they tell the present, they always talk about the poor. And it's not shocking that when we get to the third horseman, John's already drawing attention to look at how the poor are being afflicted. And in what ways, does it work for us that we could see ourselves in this third horseman so easily when people around us, like, I gotta get to work, but I can't afford gas already. Now I really can't get to work because my entire day's wages are going to go to pay that uptick and what's going to happen. My kids aren't going to be able to I'm not going to be able to buy stuff for them. But if I skip work so I can take care of them, then I don't make money so that I can pay for them. Like, these are the enigmas that so many people are stuck in. Meanwhile, there's those sitting on their cash flow with like no problem. So if you ever pull up to a gas pump and you see that there's only $5 to $10 in it, that's a perfect time to stop and remember, not everybody out there can afford to just like fill up their car every time that they need to go do something. And if you're able to fill up your car every time, like myself, that should always be conviction on us when you see the numbers on the previous one. You're like, wow, I forgot how easy it's been for me lately. And then the conviction as to how do I not partner with that third horseman, but instead take care of the people around me. So with that being said, we've got one more horseman to go, and we will hit that in our next episode. But in the meantime,
Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below.
And join us on the Discord. And also, if you have your denarius, you can go to 1208.greenwood.com and help give to support us here at the Jackson Cloud.
An entire day's wages for the Jackson Cloud episode. Thank